Ethan Matthews, a millionaire used to seeing the world through a lens of power and success, was walking down the street of his city on a cold night when something made him stop. In the middle of the sidewalk, a woman with two small girls huddled against the biting wind. What caught his attention wasn't just the scene of despair, but the woman's gaze. That gaze seemed strange, like someone he knew, or perhaps someone he could never forget. Before we start the story, comment below which city you are watching from. Enjoy the story. Ethan Matthews never thought money would lose its value. He had reached the top, obtained everything the world could offer. Mansions, luxurious cars, stuffed bank accounts. But that night, as he walked the city streets, something made him stop. The sidewalk was empty, except for a scene that seemed out of place in his impeccable world. A woman, with disheveled hair and tattered clothes, was huddled against the wind. In her arms, two little girls, pressing against her, trembling. The cold seemed to have frozen even time around them. Ethan paused and frowned. The vision was so common, so real, but something about it seemed wrong. Something familiar. He took a few more steps, stopping a few meters from the woman. Their eyes met for a moment, and it was enough. A shiver ran down his spine. He didn't know why, but something about that woman stirred him in a way he couldn't explain. It couldn't be. It couldn't be her. But what else would explain the strange sensation he felt? He stood there, looking, trying to piece it together, until a flash of memory illuminated his mind. His eyes fixed on her, and the connection came like a punch to the stomach. It was Lily Henderson, the girl he had secretly loved in high school. The same Lily with whom he had shared shy glances and an undeclared love, but who had disappeared from his life without a trace. Now she was there, standing on the sidewalk, a woman broken by life, surrounded by poverty and pain, with two girls in her arms. Ethan swallowed hard. How had she ended up there? How could the girl of his dreams have fallen so low? He was frozen, not knowing what to do. Anger and confusion began to grow inside him, but before he could take any action, Lily looked down, as if she knew he was there but preferred that he didn't see her. She took a step back, trying to hide the girls, and turned her head, avoiding Ethan's gaze. The woman he knew was, in some way, unrecognizable. And yet, it was impossible to ignore the connection he felt. Something needed to be done. But what? Ethan felt the weight of the revelation tightening his chest. It wasn't possible. He looked at her again, trying to process what his eyes were telling him. Lily Henderson. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman before him seemed like a distorted reflection of the young girl he had known years ago, with a face marked by pain and tattered clothes contrasting with the image he always kept of her. A girl full of life, with an easy smile, the kind of person who radiated light wherever she went. Those little girls, probably her daughters, were trembling with wide, scared eyes, their faces pale from the cold and despair. It was a shocking contrast. He could barely process it. How had she ended up in those conditions? Where had she been all this time? Ethan approached slowly, his mind spinning, not knowing what to do. Lily didn't look directly at him, but he saw the hesitation in her movements. She seemed so distant, as if trying to hide her pain. She, who was always full of energy and plans, now was a shadow of that person. Lily. Ethan's voice came out low, hesitant, as if he himself was afraid to recognize the woman who once occupied his thoughts. He didn't know whether to approach more or step back. He wanted to understand what had happened to her. He needed to know. She raised her eyes slowly, as if trying to analyze who was calling her, and when she did, he felt his stomach tighten. The recognition was there, in her eyes, but there was also something more, something he couldn't decipher immediately. It was as if she was trying to protect herself, building an invisible wall between them. Ethan, she whispered, as if the sound of his name was a surprise. The woman before him was no longer the same girl he had known in high school, but something in the sound of her voice made him feel that, somewhere, she was still there. "What are you doing here?" He stood still, words stuck in his throat. How could he explain his surprise, his confusion? He didn't know what to say, but something inside him pushed him to take a step forward. I can't believe it's me asking this. How did you end up here, Lily?" His voice came out firm now, a mixture of despair and concern. "What happened to you?" She took a step back, pulling the girls closer. "You have nothing to do with this, Ethan." Her voice was tense, laden with an invisible weight. "I'm no longer the person you knew. I don't know what you're expecting, but I can't accept your help." Her words fell like a sharp blade, and Ethan felt helpless. He wanted to help her, wanted to extend his hand and pull her and the girls out of that situation, but the wall she built seemed insurmountable. "Lily, you don't have to go through this alone." He took another step, his hand raised as a gesture of approach. "I can help you. Please let me help." But she didn't respond. Instead, she turned quickly, as if fleeing not just from him, but from something deeper, something that kept her tied to that place. Ethan stood there, watching as she disappeared into the darkness of the street. The silence between them now was deafening. What else could he do? What had happened to the girl he dreamed of? The girl with whom he had shared secrets and glances a lifetime ago? And more importantly, who had let her sink so deep into despair? Lily's steps were hurried and unsteady, but Ethan couldn't move. The scene before him was like a nightmare unfolding, but he couldn't look away. He wanted to scream, run after her, ask 1,000 questions at once, but the woman before him seemed determined to disappear from his life again. He saw her turn the corner and vanish into the darkness. He knew she didn't want to be found, but there was something about her that compelled him to keep going, something that forced him to follow her steps, as if his soul was tied to hers in an inexplicable way. Ethan didn't know why he cared so much, but the feeling was undeniable. He knew her. He had loved her from afar, back when she was a young girl full of dreams and hopes. Now, all that was left of her was a broken reflection, and he couldn't just let that happen. He walked to the corner where Lily had disappeared, his mind racing in search of a solution. He knew she would try to flee from him again. And, as if expecting that, she was there. He found her in an alley, her eyes downcast, the girls already wrapped in a tattered blanket, but with a look of hunger that couldn't be ignored. Ethan's instinct was immediate. "Lily, please." He tried again, approaching cautiously. "I'm not leaving. You need help. I can help you." She looked at him for a moment, anger and shame mixed in her eyes. "You don't know anything. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what happened." Her voice was heavy with pain, as if each word was an attempt to drive him away. Ethan felt his heart tighten. He didn't understand her resistance, but he also didn't judge her. He knew Lily's life was far from easy, and she was protecting herself from a pain he couldn't fully comprehend. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but urgent. "Whatever it is, I won't leave you here. I saw you grow up. I saw you smile. I saw you fight. I know you're not this woman standing there afraid to accept help." She seemed to be fighting against herself. Her gaze, for a moment, wavered. I can't go back," she murmured, almost as a confession. "I've made so many wrong choices, and now my daughters are paying for it." Ethan looked at the girls. They were quiet, but their big, hungry eyes made his heart break. He looked at Lily, and for a moment, the world around him disappeared. He saw what she was going through. He didn't need to know everything to see that she was destroyed, but what mattered now was taking a step to change that. "Lily, you're not alone. I'm not here to judge. I'm here because you deserve more than this." Ethan took another step towards her, his eyes fixed on hers. Let me help. Let's get out of here, you and your daughters. I have a place for you, a safe place. You don't have to hide anymore. She closed her eyes, her shoulders slumped, as if the weight of a lifetime was upon her. There was a glimmer of fight, but also immense exhaustion. Lily knew her pride and fears were barriers she had built over the years. But that moment, that look in Ethan, so firm and full of compassion, made her question everything. You would really do that for us? She asked softly, not believing her words. After everything that happened? Ethan responded with a simple nod, without hesitation. Yes, Lily. You don't have to do anything alone. Let me take you. Just for today. Put aside the shame and fear. I promise everything will be different. Lily was silent for a moment. The girls were hugging each other, and the look in one of their eyes, full of hope, finally touched her heart. She took a deep breath, as if the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders, even if only temporarily. All right, she finally said. I accept your help, but only because my daughters need something better. Ethan smiled gently, extending his hand to her. Let's start. Believe me, Lily, you are on the right path. And with that, she took the first step towards a future that seemed impossible. But at that moment, it seemed to be the only thing that really mattered. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. Types no if you've made it this far. Only those who get this far will understand. Now let's get back to the story. Ethan knew he was crossing a thin line. The proposal he was making was more than just an offer of shelter. It was a chance for reconstruction, a chance for Lily and her daughters to restart their lives in an environment he knew was safe, but which also carried the weight of all the complications she had already lived through. He didn't know if she was ready for it, but what he did know was that if he didn't do something, nothing would change. Lily, please, I insist. His voice was calm, but his gaze was firm. We can't stay here. I have a house, a safe place. I can't leave you and the girls like this. She looked at her daughters, and Ethan saw the pain in her eyes. The girls were not just physically exhausted, they were emotionally tired. It was as if the whole weight of the world was on them, somehow reflecting Lily's struggle. She looked at Ethan, hesitant, almost collapsing under the weight of her own shame. I don't know if this is right, she murmured, her eyes diverting to the ground, as if she couldn't face him much longer. You are offering more than I can accept. I don't want to be a burden to you. Ethan took a step towards her, maintaining a gentle but firm tone. You are not a burden, Lily. You don't have to carry everything alone. And believe me, your struggle won't end here, but this is a start, a step towards something better. Lily swallowed hard, still uncertain. She looked at her daughters, who were now quieter, their big eyes watching the interaction with a mix of curiosity and hope. They didn't know what was happening, but in their hearts, there was a desperate need for change, a need for something more than the difficult life they were living. I can't promise I'll accept all this without more questions, she said with a trembling voice, but there was a surrender in her words. But for them, I have no other choice. Ethan knew it was the right moment to act. He smiled with understanding and, without hesitation, offered his hand to Lily. It's not about promises. It's just an opportunity, Lily. All you and your daughters need now is a place to breathe, a place where you can start to heal. I'm here for that. Lily looked at him for a moment, her eyes full of internal conflicts, but soon, with a resigned sigh, she took his hand. Okay, I accept, Ethan. For them. With that, Ethan led her to the car. He was worried about her resistance, but also relieved that she had taken this first step. She was trying, and that was what mattered. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that Lily would have to fight against the ghosts of her past and her own insecurities, but he was determined to help her find her way back. Throughout the short drive to his mansion, Lily remained silent, looking out the window, as if still trying to understand what had happened. Ethan could see the battle within her, but he could also see a slight relaxation in her shoulders, as if for a moment she believed there really was a chance to start over. When they arrived at the mansion, Ethan led her through the main entrance. The contrast between what she was used to and the grandeur of the place was stark, but he knew it wasn't the time to discuss that. Lily needed stability, not more questions or judgments. "This is your home for now," Ethan said in a gentle tone, pointing to the grand staircase that rose before them. "Here, you and your daughters are safe. You don't have to worry about anything, just finding your way back." Lily looked at him, her eyes now clearer, but still full of distrust. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was closer to a possible restart than she ever imagined. "Thank you, Ethan," she finally said, her voice hoarse but filled with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he replied with a gentle smile, stepping back. "You are here because it's where you and your daughters should be. Now rest. Tomorrow is a new beginning." And so, in that quiet moment, Lily and her daughters entered the mansion, a place that symbolized not only shelter, but a chance to start over. For her, it was the first step of many, and for Ethan, it was the beginning of a new journey. A journey where he not only helped someone rebuild their life, but also his own life, which now seemed to have a new purpose. Dinner was silent, and Ethan's mansion was calm, almost serene, a stark difference from the chaos that Lily and her daughters had experienced in recent weeks. They were sitting at the table, still with wary looks, but Ethan had made an effort to ensure they felt comfortable. The fire in the fireplace warmed the room, and the aroma of delicious foods prepared by his kitchen staff floated in the air, creating a sense of warmth that Lily was not used to feeling. But despite the environment, something inside Lily was in turmoil. She felt vulnerable, exposed in a way she had never experienced before. The walls she had built with so much effort, all the defenses she had constructed over the years, were beginning to crumble. And once again, it was Ethan who was there, offering her something she didn't know if she could accept. She looked at him, sitting across from her, with a look that mixed gratitude and resistance. The conversation had been superficial until that moment, but he knew there was something more behind her silence. He knew that for her to start healing, she needed to tell the truth, and he was ready to listen, without rush, without judgment. "Ethan," she began, her voice trembling a little as she looked at her daughters, who were distracted with the dishes before them. I don't know where to start." Ethan leaned slightly forward, his eyes full of patience. He knew she was holding something very heavy, something that might be consuming her inside, and he wanted to be the ear she needed. "Start where you feel comfortable," he said, his tone gentle. "I'm here to listen, Lily." She took a deep breath, pushing away the thoughts that were holding her back. Her eyes were full of pain, as if she were reliving each moment of that part of her life. The table was full of food, but for Lily, none of it mattered at that moment. She felt an emptiness inside her, a sense of loss she had never overcome. "I was so young," she began, her voice breaking. "I had big dreams, you know. I dreamed of a future, of my career, of what I could be. And then he appeared." She looked at her hands, the words coming out slowly, as if trying to convince herself it was safe to talk about it. "Jake Miller," she continued, his name coming out of her mouth like a sharp blade. "He was everything I thought I wanted. Charm, security, sweet words. I fell in love with him, Ethan. Fell deeply in love. He made me believe I had found everything I needed." Ethan listened in silence, his eyes fixed on her. He could see the pain in her eyes, the way she was still trapped in that past. He didn't know who Jake Miller was, but he felt the anger and frustration of Lily through her words. "I thought I was living a fairy tale," Lily continued, her voice now firmer but full of bitterness. But everything changed when I found out I was pregnant. I was scared, Ethan. But Jake, he wasn't. He said he would stay with me, that we would get married, that everything would be okay. She looked at her daughters, who were now playing quietly, and a solitary tear rolled down her face. But when things got real, he disappeared. He left me, without explanation, without words, just disappeared, and I was left alone, with an unexpected pregnancy, without any support, with nothing but pain. Lily's voice broke, and she looked at Ethan, as if waiting for him to condemn her. But he didn't do that. He simply looked at her with understanding and patience, and that made her feel somehow stronger. I fought to survive, but it was hard, Ethan. I was alone with 2 girls to take care of, and the guilt was always mine. I should have seen, I should have understood. But when you're in love, you don't see the lies. The table was now quiet, and the weight of Lily's story hung in the air. She had exposed herself, finally revealing the truth that had haunted her for so long. Ethan leaned a little closer, his gaze softly focused on her. Lily, you are not to blame for this. He is the only one responsible. You were strong, even when you had no reason to be. You did the best you could with what you had. She looked at him, surprised by the kindness in his voice. I never thought it would be like this, that someone could see what I lived through and not judge me. You don't have to carry this weight alone, Ethan said softly. And you don't have to believe you're the only one responsible. We all make mistakes, but what matters now is what you're going to do from now on. Lily took a deep breath, Ethan's words slowly penetrating her heart. He didn't know everything, but he was willing to listen, to help. And for the first time in a long time, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could start anew. After dinner, the house was silent, except for the soft crackling of the fireplace in the corner of the room. Lily felt, for the first time in a long while, physically and emotionally exhausted. The words she had kept inside for so long had finally come out, and now she was alone with her thoughts. The daughters were asleep, and Ethan had retreated to his office, seemingly satisfied with having offered more than just a night of shelter. He had offered her something more precious, an opportunity to rebuild her life. But Lily couldn't stop thinking about everything that still seemed impossible. She had been disappointed so many times before, and the weight of her past was still on her shoulders, preventing her from believing that any real change could happen. How could she accept something as grand as a second chance when her own pride and insecurities made her feel unworthy of being helped? She was sitting on the sofa, her hands resting on her knees, staring at the emptiness of the room. The glow from the fireplace softly illuminated her face, but she didn't feel warm. She felt cold, distant, as if she were watching her own life from the outside, unable to touch it. When Ethan entered the room, he looked relaxed, but Lily could see the seriousness in his eyes. He had tried to be patient so far, but she knew he was waiting for an answer from her. He wanted something more, something she didn't know if she was ready to give. Lily, Ethan said in a gentle tone, I'm not just offering you a roof. I'm offering an opportunity, a chance to start over, to believe in yourself again. Lily looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and fear. You're asking me to accept something I don't know if I deserve, Ethan, she said, her voice low, full of insecurity. After everything that's happened, how can I accept this chance when I'm so broken inside? Ethan sat down beside her, his presence reassuring but firm. Lily, you don't need to deserve anything. You've been through more than most people will ever have to face. But you have something that many don't, the chance to change, to start over. I'm just here to help you take that first step. She gave a sad laugh, looking at her hands. I don't know how to start, Ethan. I've been so lost for so long. And besides, who am I now? I'm no longer the person who once dreamed of a career, of a normal life. Now I'm just a broken woman, with 2 daughters, with nothing but regrets. Ethan placed a gentle hand over hers, and Lily looked at him, surprised by the calm in his expression. Lily, I'm not asking you to be perfect. No one is. I'm asking you to try to believe there's more for you than just the weight of the past. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. She wanted to believe, but the fear, the shame, and the pain of rejection were still present, and she didn't know how to overcome them. She didn't know if she could trust herself enough to take that step. I just don't know if I can, Ethan. What if I fail? What if I'm not able to change? I don't want to disappoint you. Ethan smiled, a smile full of understanding. Lily, you won't disappoint me. You'll surprise yourself. And if you need help along the way, I'll be here. Every step. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes full of emotion. She wanted to believe, wanted to set aside the fear and accept the opportunity he was offering. But the fear of failure still kept her from taking the first step. She didn't know if she was ready to expose herself like that, to trust again. I'm afraid, she finally admitted, her voice almost a whisper. It's normal to be afraid, Ethan said gently. The important thing is not to let fear control you. You have more strength than you think. And by taking this step, you're showing yourself that you're ready for a new life. A life where you're not defined by what happened, but by what is to come. Lily took a deep breath, his words penetrating her heart. She knew Ethan was right, but the doubt was still there, like a persistent shadow. She looked at him, and for the first time since she met him, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time: hope. I'll try, Ethan, she finally said, her voice firmer. I don't know what the future holds, but I'll try, and I'll start now. Ethan smiled, and the relief was visible in his eyes. That's all I ask, Lily. One step at a time. You don't need to have all the answers now. Just keep trying. And so, for the first time, Lily took the first step toward a new life. She didn't know where it would lead her, but she knew that with Ethan's help, she finally had a chance to start over. The following days passed as a series of small but significant steps. Lily was, for the first time in a long time, allowing herself the opportunity for a different future. She was still nervous, and the fears of failure accompanied her, but there was a slight change within her. The place where she was now, with her daughters safe, offered her a sense of protection, something she had never had. That, in itself, was a victory. Ethan was patient with her but also firm. He knew that change wouldn't be easy. He had given her the opportunity, but the choice to take the next step still depended on her. He knew she needed more than just shelter. She needed something that made her feel she could regain control of her life. Lily, Ethan said one day as she was sitting in the kitchen with the girls, helping to prepare lunch. I found some personal and professional development courses. They are courses that can help you regain your confidence and skills. And I also spoke with HR at my company. There is an available position. Would you like to try? Lily looked at him, the surprise evident in her eyes. A mix of insecurity and relief took over her. I don't know if I'm ready, Ethan, she admitted, her voice hesitant. I haven't worked since the girls were born. I don't know if I have what it takes to do this. Ethan smiled with patience, sitting beside her. Lily, you have much more than you think. I've seen how hard you've worked, how much you've fought to raise your daughters. Now, I'm just giving you a chance to use that same strength for yourself. These courses will help you get back into the market, and the position at the company is just the beginning. The rest you will achieve, as you always have. She was silent for a moment, the fear of starting something new still weighing on her. But looking at her daughters, who were playing and laughing as if that place was truly their home, she knew it was time to take that step. For them, and for herself. Okay, she finally said, with a sigh. I'll try. I don't promise it will be easy, but I'll try. Ethan was happy with her response, though he knew Lily's struggle was far from over. He enrolled her immediately in online courses in administration and marketing, and helped her prepare for her interview at the company. Over the following weeks, he ensured she had all the necessary support, provided study materials, hired a tutor to help her with the more challenging subjects, and made sure she had time to focus on what was needed. The girls, for their part, began to blossom in ways Lily never imagined. In a safe and loving environment, the two little ones started to show a happier, more relaxed side. They were learning, playing, and most importantly, feeling loved and protected. Something Lily knew was the first step to their success as well. They quickly adapted to the new lifestyle, participating in activities with other neighborhood children, and even starting to study at a local school. The day of Lily's interview arrived quickly, and although she was still nervous, there was something inside her that made her believe she was ready. When she entered the room for the interview, she felt a wave of self-confidence she hadn't experienced in years. She answered the questions clearly and determined that she wanted to prove to herself and her daughters that she could be more than her story of pain and abandonment. Ethan awaited her with a calm smile when she left the interview. "How did it go?" he asked, his eyes shining with a mix of support and curiosity. I think it went well," Lily replied, still a little surprised by her own confidence. I felt capable, Ethan. I wasn't afraid to try." And by the end of the week, she received the news that she had been hired. The joy she felt at that moment was immense, a feeling of liberation she never imagined possible. Finally, she was starting to build something for herself. In the following days, the household routine began to adjust. Lily now spent the day out, while Ethan helped the girls with their activities and adaptation to the new school. But most importantly, the girls started to see their mother not just as someone who cared for them, but as a model of strength and resilience. They were learning from Lily, and Lily was learning to be the mother she always wanted to be. Not just a survivor, but someone who, despite everything, found the courage to start over. The routine that had begun to stabilize almost tranquilly was interrupted by unexpected news. Ethan was in his living room, checking some documents and trying to focus on the details of a new business opportunity, when the sound of the phone cut through the silence. He answered without looking, still immersed in what he was doing. "Ethan, you won't believe what I heard." The voice of Daniel, his longtime friend and colleague, sounded on the other end of the line. "Jake Miller is back in town." The words fell like a bomb, and Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had only heard about Jake sporadically over the years, always through rumors and gossip. The man who had abandoned Lily, the man who made her believe in promises that were never kept, was back. Ethan knew how much Lily's past still haunted her, and he couldn't ignore that Jake's arrival could shake everything she had started to build. "Jake? He's here? When?" Ethan asked, trying to control the reaction in his voice. "He arrived yesterday. I heard through some old mutual friends. He seems to be trying to regain what he lost, but I don't know what that means for you or Lily. I thought you should know." Let's have some fun with the readers in the comments. Type hot dog if you've made it this far. Now let's get back to the story. Ethan hung up the phone, the weight of the revelation now weighing on his shoulders. He got up from his chair, pacing back and forth in the room, processing the implications of the news. What did this mean for Lily? She still carried the scars of that relationship, and he knew Jake's return could trigger the ghosts of the past that she fought so hard to leave behind. He spent the rest of the afternoon thinking, unable to concentrate on work. Finally, when night fell and the house was quiet, he sat down with Lily. She was in the living room, playing with the girls, but Ethan could sense she was in an introspective moment, as if something was weighing on her mind. He didn't want to talk about Jake abruptly, but he knew he couldn't wait any longer. "Lily ... Ethan began, sitting next to her. "I heard that Jake Miller is back in town." Lily froze, her smile instantly fading. She looked at Ethan, the tension visible in her body. Her eyes darkened, and she glanced at the girls, as if trying to find an answer in their silence. But there was no way to hide the effect that information had on her. "You heard," she murmured, her voice low and almost inaudible. He's back." Ethan nodded, watching her reaction. "Yes, and I know this must be stirring up feelings for you, but I also know he was part of your past. I just wanted you to know he's around, if you want to confront this, or if you prefer to leave him behind completely." Lily sighed, a heavy sigh, and her gaze drifted into the distance, as if she were reliving moments she tried so hard to forget. Jake had been an important part of her life, but now he was a shadow she didn't know whether to face or ignore. "I never knew what to do about him, Ethan," she finally said, a touch of frustration in her voice. "He was my wrong choice, the person I trusted the most, and in the end, he was the one who abandoned me. I don't know if it's something I still need to confront. I just don't know." Ethan observed her carefully, realizing how much the idea of confronting Jake still caused a great turmoil of emotions within her. He knew Lily had made great progress, but the remnants of what she had lived with Jake were still present, no doubt. "I understand," Ethan replied, his tone gentle and understanding. "And if you think this will only hurt you more, I don't want you to feel you need to see him or confront him. But on the other hand, if you feel you need answers or need that closure, I'll be here to support you, whatever your decision." Lily closed her eyes for a moment, reflecting. She knew that what was at stake wasn't just the fact that Jake was back, but her own ability to move forward. She didn't want to be the woman who lived in the shadow of a past mistake, but at the same time, she couldn't ignore that the answers she never had could be the key to her inner peace. "I don't know, Ethan," she finally said, looking at him with a gaze of pain mixed with indecision. "I don't know if I should allow myself that last conversation with him. I still feel angry at him, but at the same time, I feel fear. Fear of not being stronger than I was before." Ethan took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You're stronger than you think, Lily, and I know that if you decide to face the past, you'll be doing it for yourself, not for him, and not for anyone else. But if you decide to leave him behind, I'll be by your side too. The decision is yours." Lily remained silent, her eyes blurred by confusion and mixed emotions. She didn't know what the best choice would be, but she knew that whatever she decided, she was no longer alone, and that, in itself, was already a victory. The meeting with Jake wasn't something Lily had planned immediately. In fact, the decision to finally see him was something she had been putting off, but as everything that happened in her life, the choice arrived without warning, a moment when she could no longer run from the shadows of her past. She knew that to move forward, she needed closure, a response, a conclusion, something that would allow her to free herself for good. That's what she told herself as she prepared for the meeting. But deep down, she knew that what she wanted most was to close a cycle of pain and disappointment that he never had the decency to comprehend. Ethan stayed by her side, not because he believed she needed protection. Lily was not weak, he knew that, but because he knew that regardless of what happened, she was no longer alone. He was there to support her, to ensure she didn't get lost in the same dark hole Jake had left her in. The meeting was set, and for a moment, Lily felt overcome by anxiety. She didn't know what to expect from him, didn't know if he was still the charming man she knew in the past, or if he would be just another arrogant and selfish version of the man who had rejected her. Jake appeared punctually at the cafe where they had agreed to meet, wearing an expensive dress shirt and the confident smile that never left him. He looked the same, and that was enough to make Lily's stomach churn. He still carried that sparkle in his eyes, that air of superiority that made everything seem like a power play. "Lily," he said, with a smooth voice as he approached the table, "I can't believe we're doing this after so long. How have you been?" She looked him up and down, trying to control the anger building inside her. He didn't know how much she had changed, how much she had grown, and most importantly, how much she didn't need him anymore. "I'm fine, Jake," she replied, trying to stay calm, but the tone of her voice betrayed that her emotions were on edge. "I just want one thing from you, an explanation." Jake settled into the chair with a nonchalant smile. He didn't seem tense at all, as if time hadn't made any difference to him. "Explanation? Lily, you know how things happen. Life takes unexpected turns. I had my reasons. I was going through difficulties, and I couldn't carry anything more than myself." Those words, the same words he used when he abandoned her, caused a lump in her throat. Lily couldn't believe he still thought she would believe his empty excuses. She always knew he didn't love her as much as she loved him, but now she was facing a brutal confirmation that everything he felt for her was just a selfish whim. "You abandoned me, Jake," Lily said, her voice tense. "And worse, you made me believe I was the problem. I carried the guilt, the weight of our mistake, without ever knowing the real reason you left. And now, telling me life took unexpected turns. You never had the courage to be honest with me." Jake seemed momentarily uncomfortable, but soon regained his composure. He reclined in the chair as if they were having a trivial conversation, as if she had no right to feel hurt. "Lily, you were always too intense. I never wanted to hurt you. The truth is, you deserved someone stronger, someone more stable. I wasn't ready for that." She laughed, a dry and bitter laugh that seemed more like an internal scream than a genuine reaction. "So, it's my fault, right? I was too intense, and you weren't ready. No, Jake, you weren't ready to be honest, to stay by my side when I needed you. You weren't ready to be a real man." Ethan, who was discreetly sitting in a corner of the cafe, watched the conversation carefully. He knew how much that moment meant to Lily, but he also knew she had to find her own truth. She needed to get everything out, needed to realize once and for all that Jake would never be the person she imagined him to be. Lily looked at Ethan, who gave a slight nod of support, and she felt stronger. She finally understood. She didn't need Jake to heal her wounds. He had been a part of her past, but now it was clear that he never had the power to define who she was or who she would become. "I don't need you, Jake," she said, her voice now firm, unwavering. "I was once your choice, but you left me. Now I am myself, and I no longer need your excuse or your validation." Jake looked at her with an expression of disdain, but Lily didn't care anymore. She knew there was nothing more to say. He was still the same selfish man, trying to justify his actions with empty words. Ethan then stood up and walked over to the table, placing a firm hand on Lily's shoulder, offering her the security and support she never got from Jake. "Lily, you are no longer alone," Ethan said gently, looking at Jake, "and she will never need you to be happy again." Jake opened his mouth, but the words didn't come out. He knew that Lily had taken the step he would never have the courage to take. He knew she was finally free of him. Lily looked at Ethan, feeling a deep gratitude for everything he had done for her. And as she gave that last look at Jake, she realized that chapter, finally, was closed. In the days following her meeting with Jake, Lily felt a change within herself. The weight of the past, which she seemed to carry with her every day, began to lighten. By confronting Jake's lies and selfishness, Lily finally understood that the real problem wasn't in her choices, but in his decisions. She had been the victim, and now, somehow, she felt lighter, as if she had broken free from what held her back. But there was something more in her heart, something that Lily couldn't immediately identify. The presence of Ethan, the way he had always been by her side, offering support without expecting anything in return, began to affect her in a way she hadn't anticipated. He had always been kind, patient, and understanding. He respected her, treated the girls with affection, and above all, seemed to genuinely care about their future. but she had never considered that the feeling she had for him could be anything beyond gratitude. Until, slowly, she began to realize that her admiration for him was growing in unexpected ways. It was an ordinary afternoon when Ethan was playing with the girls in the mansion's garden. Lily watched him from afar, her mind still battling old insecurities, when something simple but profound struck her. She saw Ethan laughing with the girls, his expression full of tenderness and patience, and for the first time, she allowed herself to think, he would be a great father, a true father, someone who could give them the love that Jake never had the courage to offer. And at that moment, Lily realized that, in addition to being the man who helped her rebuild her life, Ethan had also become an essential presence for her daughters. They adored him, and she began to see that the affection he showed them was not just an obligation, but a genuine choice. However, the feeling of vulnerability that this caused in her made her retreat. She knew how destructive love could be, how Jake's abandonment still hurt her soul. She didn't want to open her heart again, fearing that the pain could return, that she could fail once more. She convinced herself that what she felt for Ethan was just gratitude. He was the person who had supported her when she needed it most, and perhaps her affection for him was just a reflection of her emotional dependence. It was easier to think that way than to admit that she might be starting to fall in love with him. Ethan, on the other hand, was no longer hiding his feelings. Each passing day, he got closer to Lily and her daughters. The girls began to see him as an important figure in their lives, and over time, he also felt a growing connection with Lily. She, with all her complexity and silent strength, was becoming someone he didn't want to let go of. He knew she was still closed off, still protecting herself, but he also saw her internal struggle, the way she tried to resist feelings that were clearly growing within her. Ethan found himself thinking about her in unexpected moments, imagining a future where she and the girls were by his side. He began to see Lily not just as the woman he had helped, but as someone he genuinely wanted to build a life with. He loved her, even though he knew she wasn't ready to admit it. He knew she had her own battles, her own limitations, but he was willing to wait because what he felt for her was real. That night, after a long afternoon of playing in the garden, Ethan and Lily met again in the living room. The girls were already asleep, and the silence of the house seemed the perfect setting for a deeper conversation. Lily was sitting on the sofa, her eyes focused on something distant, while Ethan sat beside her. "Lily," he began, his voice gentle, "I know things have been difficult for you and I don't want to push, but I want you to know I'm here, for whatever you need." Lily looked at him, a warm feeling enveloping her chest. There was something in Ethan's eyes that made her want to open up, but at the same time, fear held her back. She didn't want to admit what she was beginning to feel, not even to herself. "I know," she replied, her voice quieter. "I know you're here, Ethan, and I'm grateful. More than you can imagine." There was a pause between them, a moment of silence filled with unspoken meanings. Lily felt her heart race. She wanted to say more, to confess what she was starting to feel, but the fear of getting hurt again held her back. She didn't know if she could take the risk. Ethan watched her in silence, and then he moved a little closer, carefully, as if waiting for a sign. "Lily, you don't need to be afraid of me. I'm not like him. I just want you to know that you have a place by my side, if one day you decide you want that too." Lily felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Ethan's words were sincere, but she knew she couldn't respond immediately. There was so much inside her that she needed to understand, so much that still needed healing. She felt the weight of her own hesitation, but knew that, for the first time, she might be able to believe in the possibility of a different future. She looked into Ethan's eyes, and a part of her wanted to take the next step, to let herself be enveloped by him. But another part, more cautious, still feared. The fear of opening up to him, of trusting completely, was still strong. "I need more time, Ethan," she finally said, her voice full of sincerity. I don't know if I'm ready for all this yet, but I also don't want to lose you." Ethan smiled gently, a smile that reflected not frustration, but patience. He knew her love wouldn't be something that happened overnight, but he was willing to wait, to give her the time she needed. And more than that, he was willing to stay by her side, no matter what happened. "I'll be here, Lily," he said softly. "You have all the time you need." The days were passing slowly but steadily, as if Lily's life was taking on a new shape, almost imperceptibly but securely. She was beginning to feel more comfortable with the girls and with the routine of her new life. The job at Ethan's company was going well, and she was starting to regain a sense of independence she hadn't experienced in a long time. But something still held her back from taking the next step in her relationship with Ethan. Although he was everything she needed, patient, kind, and always present, the fear that he saw her only as someone he saved made her pull back. She didn't want to be a responsibility to him, didn't want him to feel that the help he gave her was a form of charity. Ethan knew this. He saw Lily's resistance, her hesitation to accept everything he offered. He knew she wasn't ready to take the next step, to fully believe in what was between them. But he was willing to show her, in every possible way, that it wasn't about charity, about wanting to save someone. For him, it was a matter of love, of wanting to be by her side, because he loved her for who she was, strong, resilient, and incredibly capable. It was on a cold Saturday morning, while the girls were playing with toys in the garden, that Ethan decided to do something to surprise Lily. Something that would clearly show how he felt without words, without pressure. He wanted her to see, once and for all, that he was committed to her and her family, not out of pity, but out of choice. He wanted her to know that he genuinely cared. He took Lily to a cafe near the mansion, the place where, weeks before, they had shared some deep conversations. But this time, the meeting wouldn't be just a simple coffee outing. When they arrived, Lily was surprised to see that the cafe was closed, the lights off, and the door seemingly locked. Before she could question Ethan, he smiled softly and held her hand. "Come, there's something I want to show you." He led her to the side door of the cafe, where the owner, a friend of Ethan, was already waiting. The owner opened the door with a smile, revealing the interior of the cafe which, instead of being empty and silent, was now lit in a soft and welcoming way. The tables were arranged with small candles, and a grand piano was in a corner, playing a gentle melody. On the wall, there was a projection of photos and videos of the girls, moments Lily didn't imagine Ethan had captured. Lily looked around, astonished, not knowing what to say. Ethan guided her to a table prepared especially for them. When she sat down, he made a gesture for her to look at the images on the wall. "These are the moments when you and your daughters started to open up to me," Ethan explained, his voice soft and full of meaning. "I wanted you to see, Lily, how all these moments are not just a favor I'm doing. They are, in fact, an opportunity I see to build something with you and the girls. It's not about charity, it's not about feeling good. It's about wanting to share life, the ups and downs, the good and the bad. That's what it means to be in a family." Lily looked at the images, her breath becoming heavier as the memories began to flood her mind. The images showed herself and the girls in simple but sincere moments, in a walk in the park, at home, laughing at something she didn't exactly remember what it was, but now seemed enough to give her a sense of belonging. She remembered how much she had resisted accepting anything that seemed free, anything that made her feel undeserving. But what Ethan was doing there was not just a gesture of kindness. It was something deeper. He was saying, without words, that he wanted to be part of her life, because he saw her as someone valuable, someone he wanted to be with, not out of obligation, but out of love. Lily swallowed hard, the emotion caught in her throat. She felt a lump form, but this time it wasn't out of fear or insecurity. It was something more comforting. She looked at Ethan, her eyes full of unshed tears. You did this for me," she asked, her voice broken but sincere. This isn't just help, Ethan. This is so much more. Ethan sat next to her, gently taking her hand. It's all more, Lily. I'm not here to save you. I'm here because for me, there's nothing more important than being with you and the girls. I don't need you to see me as a hero. I just need you to see that, for me, you are my family. Lily looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude and love start to grow in her chest. She didn't yet know how to fully open up, but at that moment, she felt she was one step closer to believing in something greater, something real, something she didn't have to hide, something she didn't have to fear. I never knew what it was like to be part of a true family, Lily said softly, her eyes fixed on Ethan. But maybe now, I'm starting to understand. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. Type smartphone if you've made it this far. Only those who made it will understand. Now let's continue with the story. Ethan smiled at her, a genuine, calm smile. We'll learn together, Lily. And I'll be here, by your side, for every step of the way. The days passed, and the sense of stability that Lily was beginning to build seemed almost perfect until, one day, she received an anonymous message that changed everything. It was simple, without a sender, but the words were clear and direct. Be careful with Ethan. He's not what you think. Don't trust him. Lily looked at the phone screen, a sudden chill running down her spine. She read and reread the message, trying to find some sign that would make her believe it was just a joke or a mistake. But she couldn't. Something about the message hit her deeply, like a dark reminder of all the betrayals and disappointments she had already experienced. Why had she been so foolish as to believe that something so good could be real? She tried to push the thoughts away, but the words wouldn't leave her mind. Don't trust him. She remembered the times Jake had said sweet words only to cast her aside later, and the broken promises. The doubt was now planted, and Lily couldn't ignore it. She spent the day in an emotional whirlwind. What else didn't she know about Ethan? He had been so good to her and the girls, but what if he had ulterior motives? What if, behind the generosity, there was something she hadn't yet noticed? Lily couldn't afford to be naive anymore, but she also didn't want to push away the only person who seemed to genuinely care about her. This doubt turned into fear. Fear of opening up, fear of being hurt again, fear of falling in love and, once again, being left behind. Fear of trusting, of being vulnerable. Deep down, she knew her past insecurities were resurfacing, but how could she move forward without a vote of confidence? The next night, while Lily was getting ready for bed, Ethan appeared at her bedroom door, as if he knew exactly what was going on in her mind. She didn't know if she should talk about the anonymous message, if it would be crazy to bring it up. But the weight of doubt was already too heavy on her heart. Ethan, we need to talk, she said, her voice trembling, and he immediately entered the room, concerned. Of course, what's wrong? He sat next to her, a look of concern crossing his face. Lily hesitated, looking at him cautiously. The words were stuck in her throat, but she knew she had to open up. I received a message today, anonymous. It said I can't trust you, that you're not who you seem to be. Ethan frowned, surprised. He took Lily's hands in his, with the firmness of someone who was entirely in control of the situation. Lily, he began, his voice gentle. I understand that you have reasons to doubt, especially after everything you've been through. But the truth is, there's nothing I'm hiding from you. Everything I've done, everything I'm doing, is because I genuinely care about you and your daughters. I'm not perfect, but what you see in me is what you'll continue to see. I'm not a man who plays games, Lily. I'm not Jake. I won't abandon you. Lily felt a wave of relief mixed with a slight sadness. She wanted to believe him, but there was a block inside her, that prevented her from doing so completely. The anonymous message had ignited a fire of doubt that she didn't know how to extinguish. "I can't just ignore my insecurities," Lily said, her voice lower. "I want to believe you, but part of me is still afraid. What if I'm wrong? What if I trust and get hurt again?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding. He knew he couldn't control Lily's fears, but he also knew that the only way to overcome them was to give her the choice. "I can't force you to trust me, Lily, but what I can offer you is honesty. You have the right to be cautious. I just want you to see, over time, that my intention is genuine. Trust is something you will choose to give when you're ready." Lily stayed silent for a moment, absorbing his words. She knew that Ethan wasn't pressuring her. He was letting her take the reins of her own choice, which, in a way, was all she ever wanted: to be treated as an equal, with respect and patience. She was still scared, but she was beginning to realize that fear couldn't be the force that governed her forever. I need time, Ethan," she finally said, the vulnerability in her voice now evident. "But I also want to try to trust you, truly." Ethan smiled, the softness of his smile being the confirmation that he was willing to wait as long as it took. "I'll be here, Lily, no matter how long you need." In the following days, the interactions between Ethan and Lily grew deeper. She was beginning to open up to him in a way she hadn't before, allowing him to know her more truly and vulnerably. Ethan always showed a willingness to listen, without rush or judgment. He was starting to understand the complexities of Lily in a way she had never realized herself. He was willing to give her the security she needed because he knew she was ready to take the next step. It was a rainy night when it finally happened. Lily and Ethan were sitting on the mansion's porch, listening to the gentle sound of the storm outside. The girls were already asleep, and the house's silence seemed to be the perfect setting for a more intimate conversation. "I'm not good at being vulnerable, Ethan," Lily said, her voice gentle but clear. "I've always tried to keep everything under control, always tried to be strong all the time. But with you, it's different." Ethan looked at her, his eyes shining with understanding. "I know, Lily, and that's not a weakness. I see the strength in you, even when you feel vulnerable. That's what makes you who you are. I'm not here to change you, but to support you." Lily smiled, a smile that lit up her face despite the rain pattering against the windows. She finally felt she was allowing herself to be who she truly was, without the masks she had worn for so long. She no longer needed to hide the pain, fear, or scars of the past. Ethan had shown her that trust wasn't something imposed, but something she could choose to give when she was ready. I think I'm starting to understand what it is to let someone in, Ethan," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "I don't want to carry this weight alone anymore. I want to share it with you. I want to share my life with you." Ethan, with a gentle smile, held her hands with care. "I want to be by your side, Lily. I already am." And there, in the calm of that rainy night, Lily finally allowed Ethan into her heart in a way she had never done before. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but for the first time, she didn't feel alone. Together, she and Ethan were ready to face whatever came next, not with fear, but with renewed confidence and growing love. Time passed, and with it, Lily and Ethan continued to build the life they both desired, step by step. Lily had finally left behind the insecurities that prevented her from believing she could be loved unconditionally, and Ethan was increasingly by her side, supporting her in all decisions. He had not only become a fundamental part of her life, but also the father figure to her daughters. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but there was still something Lily couldn't overcome: the fear of being a responsibility to Ethan. She knew Ethan loved her, but often she found herself questioning if his love for her was just an attempt to save her, to fix a part of her life that he felt needed mending. She feared that no matter how much he treated her with care and affection, She was just another project for him, someone he offered love to out of responsibility, not because he truly chose her. Ethan, on the other hand, had planned something special. He knew Lily still had doubts, but he felt that it was the right moment to do something important, to show her that the love he felt was more than any gesture of charity. He wanted, once and for all, for her to know that he loved her for who she was, for everything she represented, and not out of any obligation. On a peaceful night, under the starry sky, Ethan took Lily to a small garden within the mansion. There, among the flowers and the soft light of the lanterns, he knelt before her, his heart beating strong. "Lily," he began, his voice soft but full of emotion, "I know that somewhere you still have doubts about what I feel for you. I'm not here to save you. I'm not here because you need someone. I'm here because I love you. I love you for who you are, for everything you've been through, for being the incredible woman you've become. I don't have a future without you, without the girls. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So, Lily, will you marry me?" Lily looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, her heart tight with all the emotions she could no longer control. She knew he was offering nothing but true love, without conditions, without demands. But still, fear held her back. She didn't want to be just another responsibility for him. "Ethan, she began, her voice trembling. "I don't want to be a burden to you. I don't want you to love me out of pity." Ethan took her hands, looking into her eyes with total sincerity. "You will never be a burden to me, Lily. I love you, simply because I love you. There's no reason beyond that." With a deep sigh, Lily felt her internal barriers begin to fall. For the first time, she felt she could surrender to Ethan's love without fear of being judged or feeling undeserving. Lily looked at Ethan, her words not yet complete, but the truth finally beginning to form in her heart. She had lived her whole life carrying the weight of doubt and insecurity, always wondering if she truly deserved to be loved. But something had changed within her. She no longer needed to question herself. She no longer needed to carry the burden of loneliness. She wasn't alone. She had someone by her side who loved her unconditionally, who accepted her with all her imperfections and insecurities. The hesitation she felt now wasn't about him, but about herself. She still feared fully giving in, trusting that something as beautiful as what she was experiencing with Ethan could be real. But as she looked at him, she knew she couldn't keep distancing herself from what was within her reach. "I accept," she said, her voice soft but full of conviction. "I accept, Ethan, because you're right. I don't need to hide anymore. I don't need to be afraid anymore. I want to be happy, and with you, I know I can be." Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with joy and relief. He stood up and pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling life fall into place around them. They had finally overcome the fears that separated them, and Lily was finally ready to choose happiness, to choose to be with him. They stood there, embraced, knowing that the future would be built on the love, trust, and freedom that now existed between them. Lily had chosen to be happy, and Ethan was more than happy to be the reason for her smile. The wedding of Lily and Ethan was simple but meaningful. There were no grand luxuries or ostentation, for what mattered most to them was the significance of the moment. It was about the love they had cultivated, the struggles they had overcome, and the new life they were about to begin together. The ceremony was small, with only close friends and family present. The girls were dressed in white, with wide smiles on their faces, and Lily was radiant in her simple but elegant dress. Ethan watched her, his eyes full of admiration and love. He couldn't imagine a more beautiful future than the one that was about to begin. As Lily walked down the aisle, she felt a peace she had never experienced before. Each step brought her closer to something she thought impossible: unconditional love, a life shared with someone who truly understood and accepted her. She no longer needed to carry the scars of the past. She had found her home. When the vows were exchanged, Ethan looked at Lily, his eyes shining. "I love you, Lily, with everything I am and everything I have. I promise to be by your side, no matter what the future holds." Lily smiled, her heart overflowing with happiness. "I love you, Ethan, and with you, I finally know I can be the woman I've always wanted to be." And with that, they sealed their commitment with a gentle kiss, a promise of eternal love and dedication. The marriage was the starting point of a new life for Lily, Ethan, and the girls. It was the beginning of a journey built on love, trust, and the certainty that nothing could separate them. They had found the happiness they had been seeking, and now they were ready to share this happiness with the world. Life for Lily and Ethan, now married, seemed more complete with each passing day. The house, once silent and empty, was filled with laughter and daily little adventures as the girls grew and adapted to their new life. They began to see him not just as their mother's husband, but as a true father figure. Ethan, for his part, embraced the role with a dedication that surprised everyone, including himself. He got involved in every aspect of the girls' lives, taking them to the park, helping with homework, and even teaching them to ride a bike. He knew he couldn't replace their biological father, but he was determined to be a constant presence, someone they could trust, someone who truly cared. The girls, in return, began to embrace the idea of having a father figure in their lives. They were grateful for everything Ethan did for them, and their relationship began to flourish naturally. Lily watched with a smile on her face, feeling her heart overflow with love and gratitude. She never imagined her life would take this turn, that she would find someone willing to be so dedicated not just to her, but to her daughters as well. "I never thought it would be possible," Lily said one day while watching Ethan play with the girls in the garden. "I had lost hope that we would find our family, but you made it happen." Ethan looked at her, his gaze soft. "You are my family now, Lily, and I couldn't be happier." The happiness they were building was no longer in distant dreams. It was present in the small things of daily life. It was a simple life, but full of love. Something Lily never imagined she would have, but that now filled her completely. Life finally seemed to have settled. Lily and Ethan were closer than ever, and the girls were growing confidently, happy in their new routine. Everything was perfect. But, as life often surprises us, their happiness was about to grow even more. On a quiet morning, while Ethan was getting ready to go to work, Lily felt something strange. She had noticed some changes in her body in the past few weeks, but thought it was just the stress of everyday life. However, something deep in her heart made her decide to take a pregnancy test. When the result appeared, she was paralyzed for a moment. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She was pregnant. The smile that formed on her face was instant, but a thought soon invaded. "Are we ready for this?" She looked in the mirror, her hands on her belly, feeling the surprise and emotion mixing. She had found happiness with Ethan, and now, life was about to give her the greatest gift possible. A new chance to build a family. A chance to create another life with the same hope and love she now shared with Ethan and the girls. When Ethan came home that night, Lily called him for a conversation, her eyes shining with emotion. She couldn't wait to tell him, but she knew he needed to know in a special way. "Ethan," she began, her heart beating faster, "I have something to tell you." He smiled at her, but his expression softened when he noticed the shine in her eyes. "What happened, Lily?" She placed her hand on her stomach and said, with a radiant smile, "We're expecting a baby." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Ethan was speechless, surprise taking over his face. He pulled her into a tight hug, his heart filling with a happiness he didn't know he could still feel. "I can't believe it," Ethan said, his voice full of emotion. This is amazing, Lily." At that moment, they knew that everything they had built was about to become even more beautiful. A new life was about to arrive, bringing even more joy, love, and hope to the family they had created. In the following years, Lily and Ethan, along with the girls and the baby on the way, lived a life of simplicity and happiness. The mansion was no longer just a large house. It was a home, a place of love, where every laugh, every small achievement, and every hug became the true measure of their happiness. Ethan, who once dedicated himself obsessively to success, wealth, and power, now saw the world differently. What once seemed to be his greatest achievement, money, power, recognition, now seemed irrelevant. He realized that true wealth was in his family. It was their love, the unity they had formed, that made him feel truly fulfilled. There was no more emptiness, no more endless ambition. He had everything he had always needed, without knowing he needed it. One afternoon, while the family was gathered in the living room, with the girls playing on the floor and the baby sleeping in Lily's arms, Ethan looked around, feeling an indescribable peace. He didn't need anything more. He already had what money could never buy, the unconditional love of his family. Observing him, Lily smiled softly. She knew what he was thinking. He had spent so much time chasing success, but now he knew, as she did, that true happiness was in something much simpler. "You already have everything you need, Ethan," Lily said, touching his hand. "You don't need to look for more. We are enough." Ethan looked at her and smiled with a sparkle in his eyes. "Yes, Lily. Family, love. That's all I ever wanted. That's what I was always seeking, without knowing." And at that moment, Ethan understood the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't about what he possessed, but about what he had by his side, the love of Lily, the girls, and the baby that would come. He had found his true fortune, and there was nothing more to desire. Do you think Lily made the right choice in surrendering to Ethan's love and trusting in a new chance for her family? Leave your opinion in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What rating would you give? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to follow all our stories, and check out more exciting stories by clicking here on the end screen.